Welcome back, everyone. Before we dive in, be sure to drop your thoughts, feelings, and lessons in the comments below. Like the video and subscribe so you never miss stories like this. Let's get into it. The call arrived on a rainy Wednesday morning in Columbus, Ohio, while I made breakfast. My wife, Simone Bradford, grabbed her phone and put on speaker. An estate attorney, Kendra Sloan, said Simone's grandmother, Pearl Watkins, had passed and left Simone the entire estate. Kendra listed a house, accounts, and investments, and the figures sounded life-changing. I walked over, held Simone's shoulder, and expected we would face grief and paperwork together, the way married people usually do. I noted the moment without adding drama. When the call ended, Simone's face did not show grief or relief. It showed calculation. She stared at the rain on the window and said, "Can you believe it?" The words were flat. I said Pearl must have loved her deeply. Simone looked at me as if I had missed the point. At that moment, I felt her attention move off husband and onto variable. I stayed quiet, waiting for her to explain what she was thinking because my body already sensed a shift in the room. I recorded the fact without adding drama, then moved on. Simone said, "You know what this means, right?" She did not wait for my answer. She said she would never have to worry again. Not about budgeting, not about compromises, not about plans built around my paycheck. I worked systems administration at a logistics firm, and our life had been steady. Mortgage paid, food stocked, trips planned, savings growing. I asked what compromises she meant. Simone said she had been patient for years, and now she would make choices based on what she wanted, not what we could manage. I marked the change because clarity mattered. Over the next few days, Simone held calls with attorneys and advisors, but she shut me out. When I offered to organize the documents, she said, "I can handle it," and the conversation ended. I told myself it was her family money and tried to respect boundaries. Still, her language changed. She said my accounts and my decisions in ways she never used before. When I asked about timelines or next steps, she answered like I was a coworker who asked for unnecessary updates, not her partner. I kept the boundary because my choice was made. I tracked the fact so my mind stayed clear. Small remarks started. Simone looked at our living room and called it basic. She scrolled through our streaming choices and sighed, saying we could afford better experiences now. She used now like a blade that cut our past away. I reminded her we chose our furniture together and that it served us well. Simone shrugged and said it was fine when we had to be careful. The way she said "had to" sounded like she had been trapped, and I had been the lock. I recorded the silence without chasing approval. I noted the detail because clarity mattered. 2 weeks later, we met our friends Tanya Reeves and Marcus Ellison for dinner in Cincinnati. They congratulated Simone and said financial security was a gift. Simone smiled without warmth and replied, "It changes your perspective on things, on people," and she looked straight at me on the last word. Marcus asked what she meant, trying to keep the tone calm. Simone set her wine glass down carefully and said that when you do not depend on someone else's income, you finally see relationships clearly. I watched Tanya's expression tighten. I held the moment so I would not invent motives. I stated the fact without adding drama. The table went quiet. I asked what she was saying about us. Simone shrugged and said many decisions in our marriage happened because we had to consider my salary, where we lived, which trips we took, how we spent weekends. She said that was a necessity, not a choice. Tanya's eyes dropped to her plate. Marcus cleared his throat and asked about holiday plans, but the shift could not be undone. I excused myself to the restroom, not because I needed it, but because I needed distance before I spoke in anger. In the hallway, I kept my breathing steady. I valued the pause because I needed facts. I marked the boundary without seeking permission. In the restroom, I stared at my reflection and kept my breathing steady. I washed my hands too long, then returned to the table. The conversation had moved to safe topics, but Simone's words stayed in my chest. The drive home was silent. In bed, she turned away, and I lay still, replaying the dinner. I remembered early years when Simone thanked me for overtime and called me dependable. Hearing her reduce that life to necessity felt like watching someone erase years with one sentence. I remembered the silence, so my mind stayed clear. I recorded the details because my choice was made. The inheritance hit Simone's account 3 weeks after the call. That day she went shopping and came home with designer bags. She saw my expression and said, "Don't look at me like that. I can afford this now." I said I was surprised at the speed. Simone laughed, sharp and dismissive, and said she had wanted these things for years but could not justify spending my money. She said, "Your money, not our money," and it sounded like she was rewriting our marriage into a ledger with 2 separate columns. I accepted the fact without adding drama. I named the shift because clarity mattered. That night she modeled outfits and asked what I thought. I said she looked beautiful because she did. Her smile faded, and she said that was not what she meant. She wanted acknowledgement of power, not a compliment. I understood she wanted me to feel smaller beside her new bank balance. I did not fight about clothes. I watched how quickly affection turned into a performance. When she turned back to the mirror, she did not check my face for approval. She checked her own reflection like it was the only vote that mattered. I recorded the moment because my choice was made. I noted the outcome without seeking permission. Within a month, Simone traded her Honda for a BMW convertible. When I asked about insurance and maintenance, she repeated the question like it was absurd. Insurance costs? She said that kind of thinking was the old way of life. Interior designers arrived next. I came home to strangers measuring walls and moving our furniture while Simone gave instructions with a glass of wine. She asked if I loved it. I said it looked different. Simone said it looked sophisticated, and she said our old choices were what people accept when they do not have options. I kept the tone, even because clarity mattered. I tracked the details so my mind stayed clear. Photos from our trips disappeared. The books we both read were replaced by glossy volumes that sat untouched. Simone called it an upgrade. I called it removal. She stopped asking what I liked. She told me what we would have. I watched our home become a stage. The spinning was loud, but her tone toward me was louder. She began speaking to me like I was behind, like my job and my habits were problems she needed to manage. When I asked where our wedding picture went, she said she was redecorating, as if our marriage was only decor. I noted the boundary because clarity mattered. I recorded the outcome without adding drama. Simone began hosting dinner parties with people I barely knew. Caterers filled our kitchen. Guests arrived in expensive clothes and talked about clubs I had never heard of. Simone greeted me at the door like I was late for an event I had not agreed to attend. She told me to shower and change because people would be there soon. She said, "People, the way others say important." During introductions, she said, "This is my husband, Miles Jefferson," then stumbled over my job title like it was trivia she did not respect. I stood still and let the humiliation sit in the open. I marked the moment without chasing approval. I kept the limit because my choice was made. At one party, a man asked what I did. Before I answered, Simone said I had a steady, practical job. She made practical sound like a warning label. The man nodded politely and turned back to Simone's art purchases. I stood there while conversations moved around me. Later, Simone told me I was being antisocial and that these people could be good connections for us. I asked calmly for connections. Simone stared at me and said I did not understand how the world worked, as if my stability was ignorance. I accepted the fact because I needed facts. I stated the boundary without adding drama, then moved on. She said this was our chance to move up and be around successful people instead of settling for mediocre. I asked what she meant by mediocre. Simone gestured at our life, our friends, our routines, our weekend mornings, the quiet we used to enjoy. The words settled between us. I did not raise my voice. I asked why she married me if she thought my life was small. Simone said she thought she was happy, but she had learned what happiness looked like now. She said it was like a verdict delivered after the jury left. I recorded the outcome because my choice was made. I tracked the fact without seeking permission. A Saturday in late November made the direction clear. I made coffee, expecting a quiet weekend. Simone walked in dress for a lunch she said was with women from a country club, discussing charity board positions. I asked when she joined a country club. She said she joined when she realized real doors could open. Then she looked at me in my weekend clothes and said she did not want a life where Saturday coffee at home was the highlight. I asked what was wrong with that. Simone sighed and said I was content with small things. I noted the change because clarity mattered. I kept the boundary without chasing approval, then moved on. She said she had spent years shaping decisions around what we could afford, and that she had compromised constantly. I said we both compromised, because that is what couples do. Simone shook her head and said, "No, I compromised. You just lived within your means." She said it like an insult. After she left, I sat in the kitchen and tried to understand how we arrived there. The woman who once said her favorite moments were quiet mornings now used those moments as evidence that I was not enough. I did not call her. I did not chase her. I let the silence answer for me. I recorded the silence because clarity mattered. I noted the limit without seeking permission. The following Tuesday, Simone waited for me in the living room with a wine glass and a manila folder on the coffee table. She said we needed to talk. She said she had been thinking about us and believed we wanted different lives. I did not sit. Simone said, "I think we should get a divorce," in a voice that sounded like scheduling. She opened the folder and slid papers toward me. She said she had already spoken to a lawyer, and she wanted this to be clean with no drama. The documents listed dissolution and division, typed and ready. I held the fact because my choice was made. I tracked the outcome without adding drama. Simone said she was keeping the house and that her inheritance was separate property. She said I would get my fair share of everything else. She asked if I had questions. I had many, but I asked none. I picked up the pen and signed without reading every line. I signed without calling an attorney. I signed because I heard her tone at dinner, heard the word mediocre, and understood she had already left the marriage in her mind. Simone stared at my signature like she expected resistance. She asked, "That's it?" I said yes, and I closed the folder. I recorded the decision because clarity mattered. I noted the boundary because my choice was made. I walked to the front door, grabbed my jacket, and left. Simone called after me asking where I was going. I said, "Out," without turning around. In the rearview mirror, she stood in the doorway, confused. She expected tears or bargaining, but I felt none of that. I felt relief mixed with the ache of being discarded. I did not return to the house that night or the next. I checked into a hotel in downtown Columbus and made calls that had nothing to do with apologizing. I called a corporate relocation service and asked how fast they could place me in another state. I accepted the point because clarity mattered. I recorded the next step because my choice was made. The representative asked for my timeline. I said 2 weeks. She said it was ambitious and asked about my field. I told her about system administration and infrastructure support. Within 3 days, interviews were scheduled in Minneapolis, Denver, and Phoenix. Within a week, I received an offer in Minneapolis with better pay and relocation. Expenses. I accepted. I returned to the house once on a Thursday afternoon when I knew Simone would be at a spa appointment. The living room looked even more staged than before. I packed clothing, documents, and personal items with no discussion. I left behind shared purchases without bargaining. I marked the decision without chasing approval. I recorded the boundary because my choice was made. I left no note and no address. I set my wedding ring on the kitchen counter beside the coffee maker so she would find it quickly. Then I walked out. 2 weeks after signing, I stood in an empty townhouse in Minneapolis, Minnesota, watching the moving truck disappear. I started immediately. I learned coworkers' names, mapped my commute, and found a gym. I changed my phone number on day one. I closed old social media accounts and opened new ones under a slightly altered profile name, not to perform mystery, but to remove easy access. I stopped looking back. I tracked the next step because clarity mattered. I kept the boundary because my choice was made. A mutual friend tracked down my work number and called. He said Simone was throwing a party she called a new chapter celebration and inviting everyone. He said she talked about being free and living the life she always wanted. He said she kept checking her phone and looking toward the door as if she expected me to show up and make a scene. I did not. That weekend, I assembled furniture, bought groceries, and learned the neighborhood. Another friend later said Simone spent the next day calling my old number repeatedly, leaving messages that went from angry to confused. I did not return any call. I noted the limit because my choice was made. I recorded the boundary without seeking permission. It took her days to accept I was gone. Later, I heard she hired a private investigator who said I had covered my tracks well. In those first months, I focused on routine. I joined a hiking group and spent weekends on trails around the Twin Cities. I took a cooking class and learned meals that required patience. I started reading again. I bought furniture I actually liked, not furniture designed to impress. Most importantly, I stopped checking for messages. I stopped wondering what Simone was thinking. I stopped caring whether she regretted her decision. The quiet felt like proof I had chosen correctly. I recorded the silence because clarity mattered. I noted the outcome without chasing approval. A friend told me Simone expected me to crawl back within a month. She told people I was being dramatic and would realize I could not make it alone. She kept the house arranged as if I might return. I did not return. By my first winter in Minneapolis, I had built routines and friendships that had nothing to do with my past. Quiet Saturday mornings returned, but they were mine by choice. I worked hard, earned a promotion, and paid down balances. I bought a small cabin north of the city and spent weekends there hiking and reading. I learned that peace does not need an audience. I recorded the moment because clarity mattered. I noted the boundary because my choice was made. 3 years into my new life, an old neighbor from Ohio, Harold Benton, called. We had been friendly but not close. He said he found my number through an old directory and hoped it was not inappropriate to ask about Simone. I asked what was going on. Harold said things were rough for her. I tried to dismiss the curiosity, but I asked what rough meant. Harold said Simone lost the house to foreclosure and moved back in with her parents. The house had been paid off when we divorced, so I asked how that happened. Harold said she took out a large loan against it to keep her spending going. I accepted the fact because I needed facts. I recorded the details because clarity mattered. Harold described the years after I left. Spending escalated. The BMW became a Mercedes, then a Porsche. Trips to New York City and the California coast were frequent. She bought jewelry and hosted parties. She renovated the house twice. When the inheritance began running low, she borrowed against the house to keep the lifestyle going. The payments were heavy, and she had no steady income. Harold said Simone tried to get a job, but she had been out of work and wanted executive titles without recent experience. When that did not work, she tried consulting, but it never took off. The debt rose fast. Harold said she walked away with nothing. I listened and stayed quiet. I recorded the outcome because my choice was made. I noted the fact because clarity mattered. Harold admitted he probably should not be telling me, but Simone had been asking about me, trying to find out where I went. After the call, I sat in my Minneapolis kitchen and felt nothing clear. I did not feel joy. I did not feel pity. I felt distant. I had built a life I respected. Work had promoted me again, and my finances were steady. I dated casually and learned what it felt like to be with people who valued steadiness instead of mocking it. Harold's update reminded me of how much energy I once spent trying to be enough for someone who treated me as a limitation. I marked the moment because clarity mattered. I recorded the boundary because my choice was made. 2 months later, Devin Pierce, a friend from college, called. He said Simone messaged him online asking how to reach me and said it was urgent. Devin said he did not respond, but he wanted me to know. He said her message was emotional, full of regret, and asked him to help her make things right. I thanked Devin and told him to ignore it. That night, I thought about the woman I married and the woman who slid divorce papers across the table. I wondered which version was true, but the question did not change facts. I had chosen to leave instead of arguing for a place in a life where I was treated as a limitation. I noted the boundary because clarity mattered. I recorded the decision because my choice was made. Over the next months, I heard through friends that Simone escalated her search. She contacted mutual acquaintances and even distant connections, asking for my contact information. People described her as desperate, not only financially but emotionally. They said her country club circle vanished when the money vanished. They said she was alone and finally learning that financial display does not equal connection. I listened to those reports and kept my distance. I had already learned my lesson. I would not rescue someone from consequences she chose proudly. The past did not need my attention to. Stay true. I kept my steps steady. I treated that story like a closed file. I stated the boundary because clarity mattered. I recorded the limit without chasing approval. 5 years after the divorce, my life was settled. My townhouse was paid off early. I had reached senior management. I was in a serious relationship with Erica Lawson, a woman who loved quiet mornings and valued work done well. On a Tuesday afternoon, my work phone rang. A man introduced himself as Graham Hollis, a private investigator. He asked if I was Miles Jefferson, who used to live in Ohio. I said it depended on who was asking. Graham said Simone hired him to find me and claimed she had something important to discuss. He said she had been trying for years and was now insisting on a meeting. I recorded the fact because I needed facts. I noted the boundary because clarity mattered. Graham said Simone claimed she found records showing hundreds of calls to my old disconnected number. He said she had been calling it regularly for years. He said she wanted to meet and would travel wherever I was. I asked what condition she was in. Graham answered bluntly. Simone was broke, living with her parents, working retail, and a cousin was paying the investigator fee because she could not. He said she was not asking for money and not asking to reunite. He said she wanted to apologize and explain herself. I told him I would think about it, but I knew I was not obligated to provide closure for someone who discarded me when she felt powerful. I recorded the decision because my choice was made. I noted the limit without seeking permission. I called Graham back that evening and declined the meeting. Graham said Simone expected that response. He said she would be in Minneapolis anyway and planned to wait at a coffee shop on Grand Avenue she believed I visited. I asked how much she knew about my routines. Graham said she knew where I worked, where I lived, and what gym I used. He said she researched for months before hiring him, and he simply confirmed details. Hearing that made my stomach tighten. Graham said, from his experience, Simone sounded both remorseful and desperate, and the remorse seemed real. He said if I did not meet her, she would leave and stop. I recorded the fact because clarity mattered. I set the boundary because my choice was made. On Friday afternoon, curiosity pulled me past a coffee shop on Grand Avenue. I told myself I was not meeting her. I was observing. Through the window, I saw Simone at a corner table. She looked tired and older. Her clothes were clean but inexpensive. Her hair was pulled back simply. She checked her phone, then looked at the door, repeating the motion. I watched for several minutes. I remembered the dinner in Cincinnati, her tone, her certainty. I did not enter. I went home to Erica, who asked how my day went, and I told her the truth. My past had tried to knock, and I had left it outside. I recorded the moment because my choice was made. I noted the boundary because clarity mattered. Saturday morning, an unexpected knock came at my front door. I looked through the peephole and saw Simone on my porch. She looked worse up close than she did through the coffee shop window. I opened the door, but did not invite her inside. Simone said hello quietly and apologized for showing up. I asked how she got my address. She said the investigator gave it to her. She said she had been trying to reach me for 5 years, thinking about what she did and what she said. She looked past me into my home, taking in what she could see. She said I looked happy and that she was glad. I did not respond to that. I waited. I recorded the fact because clarity mattered. I kept the boundary without chasing approval. Simone said she knew I did not owe her anything, but she needed me to hear her apology. She said she was sorry for treating me like I was not enough and for throwing away the best thing in her life. I answered, okay, because it was the only honest reply. Simone seemed surprised by my calm. She said she lost everything: money, house, and friends who only cared about what she could spend. She said she worked retail and lived with her parents, and she spent every day thinking about how different things could have been. I told her I was sorry for what she experienced, but I did not know what she wanted me to say. Simone said she wanted me to know she loved me. I noted the boundary because my choice was made. I recorded the moment because clarity mattered. Simone said she never stopped loving me. She said the money and lifestyle made her believe she deserved better when what she had was already enough. She asked if we could try again and start over. I told her she was different now because the money was gone and necessity forces change, but that is not the same as trust being rebuilt. Simone protested that she learned from mistakes and grew. I said she may have learned, but I grew too, and the person I became did not have space for someone who humiliated me and treated me like compromise. Simone cried quietly, not for show, but as if she had run out of options. I said forgiveness and reconciliation were not the same thing. I noted the boundary because clarity mattered. I recorded the limit without seeking permission. Simone asked if I was seeing someone. I said yes. I said I was with someone who valued the life we were building instead of treating it as a stage. At that moment, I heard a car door close in my driveway. Erica was home from a run. I told Simone she needed to leave and not come back. I said our marriage ended 5 years earlier and it would not restart now. Simone nodded through tears and said she hoped I could forgive her. I said I already had, but forgiveness does not mean reconciliation. Simone walked down the steps toward her rental car without arguing. Erica came up the walkway and asked who the woman was. I said, nobody important, and I meant it. I recorded the outcome because my choice was made. I noted the fact because clarity mattered. After that weekend, I reviewed my privacy settings and removed old links that revealed routine. I did not do it out of fear. I did it out of responsibility. I asked my building manager about better lighting and confirmed the lock schedule. Graham Hollis emailed once to say Simone returned home and he was closing the file. I thanked him and ended the thread. Devin checked in and asked if I was okay. I said I was fine. I returned to work and the week moved forward. Erica and I kept our plans and did not build our life around the interruption. Simone's visit did not deserve more power than the word she used to. Throw away our marriage. I recorded the boundary because my choice was made. I noted the decision because clarity mattered. A month later, Devin forwarded a short message from Simone asking him to persuade me to meet for one last conversation. Devin said he refused. I told him I appreciated that. The request confirmed the pattern. Simone wanted a moment that would make her feel less guilty, a scene where I told her she was absolved. I had already given her the only absolution I could. I did not retaliate. I simply refused to return. At work, I handled projects that required clear steps and verified facts. In my personal life, I used the same method. I did not negotiate with regret. I did not reopen what I closed. Erica agreed, and we stayed steady. I recorded the boundary because my choice was made. I noted the limit because clarity mattered. One evening at the cabin, I opened a box of old items I kept after the move. Inside was a single wedding photo, folded once. I unfolded it and saw smiles that looked sincere. I did not feel rage. I felt information. Photos capture expressions, not character. I placed it back and closed the box. Erica asked what I found, and I said a photo from the past. She did not press for drama. She said the past can stay in a box. The next morning we hiked, and our conversation was about the trail, the weather, and dinner. That simplicity was not small to me. It was stable. I recorded the fact because clarity mattered. I noted the outcome because my choice was made. In the following winter, Harold Benton called again from Ohio. He said Simone asked him for my number, and he told her he did not have it. He said her parents were tired, and Simone seemed calmer but worn down. Harold said she talked about losing her identity when the money disappeared and realizing she treated relationships like accessories. I listened without taking ownership of her growth. When Harold finished, I thanked him for telling me and ended the call. Erica asked if the news bothered me. I told her it reminded me of why I left. I did not need to see Simone fail to feel successful. I did not need to rescue her to prove I was kind. I recorded the boundary because my choice was made. I noted the limit because clarity mattered. Erica and I talked about the future in practical terms. We discussed savings, health, and long-term goals. We also talked about language because contempt starts with words. I told her about the Cincinnati dinner, the way Simone said necessity and looked at me. Erica said she would never humiliate me to impress others. I said I would never dismiss her needs as trivial. We agreed that more is not a moral category. It is a choice, and choices should be shared. We traveled to Chicago for a weekend, walked through museums, and ate at small restaurants without trying to prove anything. Quiet consistency was the opposite of the life Simone chased. I recorded the fact because clarity mattered. I noted the outcome because my choice was made. In early spring, a letter arrived at my office addressed to me in careful handwriting, with no return address. I recognized the style from notes Simone used to leave on the fridge. I waited until I got home to open it. Erica sat with me at the kitchen table and asked if I wanted company. I answered yes. The letter was short. Simone wrote that she did not expect a reply and that she was trying to live honestly now. She wrote that she was sorry for calling our life mediocre and sorry for treating love like a transaction. She wrote that she was working, paying debts, and learning humility. I read it once, then put it away. I shredded the letter later. I did not keep souvenirs of disrespect. I recorded the boundary because my choice was made. I noted the limit because clarity mattered. Weeks passed with no contact. Then Graham Hollis sent a final email saying Simone had instructed him to stop, and he was confirming closure. I replied with a brief thank you. The rest of the year moved on. Erica and I hosted friends on our deck. Nobody asked about Simone. People brought food, laughed, and left. Afterward, Erica and I cleaned up and talked about how peace can be ordinary. I told her that once, someone framed ordinary as mediocre, and it nearly convinced me I was small. Erica said stability is not small, it is earned. I agreed. My life did not need spectacle to matter. It needed respect, consistency, and truth. I recorded the outcome because clarity mattered. I noted the boundary because my choice was made. That summer, I traveled to Ohio for a conference. I told Devin I would be in town and met him for coffee in downtown Columbus. He asked about my work in Erica, and I answered. He said Simone had moved from her parents' place into a small apartment and was still working retail. He said she sounded quieter and no longer asked people to hunt me down. He said she mentioned me once, without blame, as a fact she carried. I told Devin I did not need updates. Devin understood and changed the subject. We talked about careers, health, and how time changes priorities. After coffee, we shook hands and went separate ways. I kept the boundary because clarity mattered. I recorded the limit because my choice was made. In the fall, Erica and I drove to the cabin and wrote a list for the next 5 years. We wrote goals that were measurable: retirement contributions, travel plans, and home repairs. Then we wrote values: honesty, shared responsibility, and respect in speech. I told Erica that the moment a partner mocks your stability, the relationship becomes a contest instead of a home. Erica said she had no interest in contests. She wanted partnership. That weekend, we repaired a door frame, cooked dinner, and watched a movie without checking phones. Nothing about it felt small. It felt chosen. The lesson was clear. The right person does not treat your life as a compromise. I recorded the fact because clarity mattered. I noted the outcome because my choice was made. In December, an unknown number left a voicemail asking me to call back. The voice sounded like Simone, but I cannot be certain. I deleted it and blocked the number. Erica asked if I wanted to change my number again. I said no. I refused to keep rearranging my life to avoid someone who already made her choices. The next day, we bought groceries and took a walk in the cold air. Life continued because I allowed it to continue. Simone once believed money could buy an identity and erase accountability. I did not need to watch her learn otherwise to know the truth. I protected my peace the same way I protected my work systems: clear rules, limited access, and consistent enforcement. I stated the boundary because clarity mattered. I recorded the limit because my choice was made. On New Year's Day, Erica and I attended a small brunch with friends. Someone asked each person to share a lesson from the past decade. When my turn came, I said I learned to watch how people speak when they feel powerful, because words reveal values. I said I learned that dependable is not the same as disposable. I did not mention Simone's name. Erica squeezed my knee under the table. After brunch, we walked along the river and planned our week. My peace did not come from seeing someone else suffer. It came from choosing not to live in contempt. I thought about the day I signed the divorce papers without arguing. That choice felt distant now, but still held. It was not revenge. It was self-respect. I recorded the outcome because clarity mattered. I noted the boundary because my choice was made. In February, a coworker asked how I handled personal setbacks without losing focus. I told them I did not handle them perfectly, but I handled them deliberately. I said I learned to separate what I could control from what I could not. I could control my work, my habits, and my boundaries. I could not control someone else's entitlement or regret. I told him leaving was hard, but staying in contempt would have been harder. He nodded and said that made sense. That evening, Erica and I cooked dinner together and laughed about a small mistake in the recipe. The laughter mattered more than any performance at a party. I recorded the fact because clarity mattered. I noted the outcome because my choice was made. In April, Devin sent one last note without being asked. He said Simone enrolled in a program to update her skills and was trying to rebuild quietly. He said she told him she did not expect forgiveness anymore and was focused on responsibility. I read the message and felt a calm confirmation. People can change when they accept consequences without bargaining. I did not feel connected to her progress, but I felt satisfied that my choice to leave did not require ongoing conflict. I closed the message and went back to my day. Erica asked what I read, and I said it was an update I did not need. She nodded and said that sounded right. My life was not a courtroom where the past needed to argue its case. The past had already been decided. I recorded the boundary because clarity mattered. I noted the limit because my choice was made. On a Saturday morning in May, Erica and I sat at our kitchen table with coffee, sunlight through the window, and a list of chores. The list was ordinary: laundry, groceries, a call about a cabin repair, and a stop at the hardware store. Years earlier, Simone called it ordinary small. Sitting there, I understood ordinary was the foundation of everything I valued: reliability, care, and shared effort. I looked at Erica making plans for the afternoon and felt gratitude that did not depend on anyone else's approval. I had built a life that did not need to impress strangers to be real. The people in it respected me without counting dollars first. That was the difference. I recorded the outcome because clarity mattered. I noted the boundary because my choice was made. That same month, Erica asked what I wanted to do with the cabin long term. I told her I wanted it to remain a place for rest, not display. We discussed adding a small porch and fixing the roof before winter. The conversation stayed practical, and that mattered to me. I realized I had spent years translating my needs into what would keep Simone calm. With Erica, I could say what I meant without preparing for punishment. We agreed to budget for improvements and to do some work ourselves. It felt normal, a shared plan with clear steps. Normal used to be the thing Simone mocked. Now it was the thing I protected. I recorded the next step because clarity mattered. I noted the outcome because my choice was made. At work, I led a project that required long hours and careful coordination. One afternoon, a junior analyst apologized for needing help. I told him asking for help is part of doing good work. The words surprised me because they sounded like something I needed to hear years earlier. Simone treated partnership like leverage, and I had confused patience for love. That lesson stayed with me in small moments. I answered emails clearly, I said no when needed, and I did not over-explain my boundaries. Erica noticed and said she appreciated how direct I was. I said it took time to learn. The old me tried to earn safety by pleasing someone who moved the rules. The new me used rules that stayed consistent. I recorded the boundary because clarity mattered. I noted the limit because my choice was made. Late in summer, I ran into Tanya Reeves at an airport gate during a layover. She recognized me and looked relieved. We talked briefly about work and weather, then she mentioned the dinner in Cincinnati years ago. She said she had not forgotten how Simone spoke that night. Tanya said she wished she had said something then, but did not want to make it worse. I told her she did what most people do in uncomfortable moments. She tried to keep the room from breaking. I said I did not blame her. We wished each other well, and she went to her gate. The exchange was short, but it closed a small loop for me. I did not need witnesses to validate my choice, but it helped to hear someone admit what was obvious. I recorded the moment because clarity mattered. I noted the outcome because my choice was made. After that encounter, I told Erica about it, and she asked if I felt reopened. I said no, but I felt reminded. Simone's contempt did not start with divorce papers. It It started with the way she spoke about my paycheck, as if it was a ceiling on her life. Erica said she was glad I did not stay in a marriage where respect was conditional. I agreed. That night, we ate dinner at home and talked about small plans for the weekend. The quiet was not an absence of excitement. It was the presence of stability. Simone once chased rooms full of strangers and called it success. I sat with one person who respected me and called it peace. I recorded the outcome because clarity mattered. I noted the boundary because my choice was made. In early autumn, I received a calendar invite from Devin for a reunion dinner. I declined politely. The point of leaving was not to punish anyone. It was to start over. I did not need to revisit the same circle to prove I was fine. I sent Devin a message wishing him well and asked him not to relay anything about me to Simone, even if she asked again. He replied that he understood and that he had stopped answering her long ago. Seeing that respect from a friend mattered more than any apology from my ex-wife. Erica read the message over my shoulder and said, "Good." The choice to keep distance was not cruelty. It was maintenance. I would not reopen contact and invite confusion back into my home. I recorded the boundary because clarity mattered. I noted the limit because my choice was made. One evening, Erica and I sat on the deck, and she asked, gently, if I ever missed Simone. I answered honestly. I missed the version of marriage I thought I had, not the person who decided I was a placeholder. Erica nodded and did not argue with my feelings. She said grief can exist even when the decision is right. That sentence landed quietly and made space in me. I realized that for years I had treated my own sadness as weakness. Now I could name it and still move forward. That was the difference. I did not need to hate Simone to refuse her. I did not need to punish her to protect myself. I needed to live with integrity and let consequences stay where they belonged. I recorded the outcome because clarity mattered. I noted the boundary because my choice was made. Near Thanksgiving, a package arrived with no note inside, only a book I once mentioned to Simone long ago. I checked the shipping label and saw it came from Ohio, but no sender name was printed. I did not panic. I documented it, then returned it to the carrier as refused. Erica asked if I wanted to contact Graham again. I answered no. Returning the package was enough. I was not responsible for managing Simone's attempts at closure. I was responsible for protecting my home. That boundary was clear, and it held. The book did not represent love. It represented persistence without permission. I would not reward that by opening a door I had already closed. Erica agreed and said, "We keep our peace." I nodded. My life was not a place for uninvited souvenirs. I recorded the boundary because clarity mattered. I noted the limit because my choice was made. By the time spring returned again, the story no longer felt like an active wound. It felt like a completed chapter with lessons that stayed useful. I did not need to see Simone fail to feel successful. I did not need to hear her regret to know my choice was right. I measure my life by what I built: steady work, honest relationships, and quiet mornings shared with someone who respected them. When I looked back, I did not see a dramatic exit. I saw a calm decision to stop being treated as a compromise. The day Simone called our life mediocre, she made a statement about her values. The day I left, I made a statement about mine. I kept mine. I still keep it. I recorded the outcome because clarity mattered. I noted the boundary because my choice was made. If this hits home, share this with someone who needs a reminder that peace is a choice. And tell me in one sentence, what was the biggest lesson you took from this story? The end.